you know, that water, when we have more water in our charts, we tend to intuit what people want from us. And when we have a lot of Libra, Libra likes that balance and likes ease and being likable, because that means that there is a balance to the situation. So it would feel really unbalanced to a Libra to create a lot of stir the pot and stand in whatever it is that they're standing in, if it created conflict. So, you know, just some interesting little, you know, pieces there. And one of the things that this is the introduction to this topic. And as we, I'll talk about the course that I'm going to be offering, and that's part of it, is looking at individual astrology around how to shine brighter and fortify your boundaries through looking at your chart and what maybe your triggers are around not having them, or just not having the awareness or the language. For me, the understanding of boundaries was also something that I couldn't conceptualize. I'm a very visual person. I'm super dyslexic. And for me, boundaries was always just like, okay, I get that, but I don't really. And so for me, kind of like having my own definition, which for me came from looking at, I'm like, let me get in there, like, what's the root word? And what I found was like a bound or a binding or held together. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that makes so much sense to me, to think of it, our boundaries, as our book, like what our soul came here to do, our soul contracts, our soul visions, our work that we came here to do. And if the binding, the boundaries, the binding on that book is all rackety, then the pages are just going to fly out, or the pages are going to be missing. There's going to be, you know, there could be multiple pages missing from the work that you're meant to do here because it's leaking out. And something else that I realized through starting to recognize other people's boundaries was like, gosh darn it, I really love it when someone sets a boundary with me. I really love it when I can see where someone else ends and where I begin. I love it when someone says, no, that's too much for me. I can't commit to that, or I just need some space. I love that because it helps me to know where my energy is and where their energy is, where my book begins and my book ends, and where their book begins and their book ends. So, I just said that. And keeping all those pages together is such an important piece to this, to understanding. So just having that visual can really help create that understanding around why boundaries are important. And like I'm saying, in an intellectual way, we get it, it makes sense, but there can be a lack of understanding of how to incorporate this topic into our lives, right? So if we think about a binding being really strong or really fortified, it's a condensation, it's condensing that energy, and that is magnetic to others. And it's interesting because that's magnetic to others. Like I'm saying, when someone sets a boundary with me, I'm like, oh, I love it. Like, I love this person. Like, they don't care. They don't care. They're just doing their work. And I can enjoy when our books, you know, meet up and it makes sense. And they're letting me know how they keep their book strong, how they keep their soul work strong, is by making sure their binding is strong, their boundaries are strong. So when we're talking about really, you know, shining brighter, being in our soul purpose, it really comes down to how much, and I hate the word protection because I don't feel like it's protection, but I'm looking for another word outside of protection. But it's like, how do we energize our own path more? It's by creating that structure so that we can see how magnetic we are when we are contained. And something I talk about, if some of you have taken my intuitive success course or intuitive development course, and one of the things I talk about in there is starting to recognize, and people, this is like the thing that people constantly will tell me, like, oh my gosh, this helped me so much, was starting to recognize when you're not even in your energy, like when you're like sending your energy way out, either to kind of like check out a situation or to send someone else a bunch of energy, or to check in on your kids if your kids are not with you, like kind of like thinking about them, worrying about them, sending your energy away from yourself, and just how that really creates lots of leaks and holes and lack of strength in your binding. And of course, I'm not saying you're not supposed to think about like especially your children, but the more that you can call that energy back, call your energy back, the more your children are going to feel safe in the world. And it's really this kind of a little bit counterintuitive to what our fear tells us to, like, really, you should worry more. Like if you're not worrying, you're not doing your job. But what we know through neuroscience, why can't I ever see my arrows? What we know through neuroscience is that that energy leads matter. That if you're creating a lot of worry and stress in your energy field, or unfortunately in someone else's energy field, which is not where you belong, and that's why calling your energy back is so important. But if you're creating a lot of worry, a lot of fear, that can manifest. And this is not to get into like the whole, you made it happen, like victim blame situation. It's just to say, if you're creating a lot of fear and worry and stress and tension, you are literally manifesting in your body more of that feeling of stress, worry, and anxiety. So to move forward from that place, I just would invite you to take a moment, kind of tune into your low belly, take some deep breaths. And if you feel comfortable, closing your eyes. And really just start to visualize in your mind's eye a space, a place, it could be in nature, it could be a room, it could be, a temple, it could be anywhere that feels sacred to you, a space that feels sacred to you. And just start to notice the colors, the visuals, anything that pops out to you as important, as sacred, as special. And then notice how that feels in your body. Like just notice where you're feeling that in your body, what that makes you feel like any emotions that come up, any thoughts or feelings that come up. Okay, now while keeping this in your mind's eye and taking notice of how you feel and where you feel it in your body, I want you to kind of do something silly in your mind's eye now. And that's to literally just kind of like scramble some of these sacred things in this sacred space and go ahead and like scatter them about, like as wide as you can scatter them about. Like, so you're like imagining in your mind's eye this sacred place, room, space, and you're taking things from there and then just scatter them out throughout the world, like all over, right? And notice how that feels in your body. Notice how that feels in your energy field to have all those things scattered about. And there's nothing wrong or right about how it feels. Just take notice. And as those things are scattered about, still keep in your mind's eye the sacred space. And notice how it feels without a lot of the things that made it feel sacred, right? Like notice how it feels to be there knowing that there's things missing. And then go ahead in your mind's eye and just call all those beautiful things back. Those things, those whatever objects, beings, plants, whatever you were seeing, call the energy of those things back into the sacred space. And then just like a question to like consider for yourself, like this is not something I or anyone else has the answer to, but how do you recognize something as sacred? So go ahead and just like call your energy back to the room and open your eyes if they're closed, and just, you know, for your journal or for your exploration, how do you recognize something as sacred? What is sacred to you? And just recognizing too that regardless of like what came up for you, like I love my favorite thing about this work is that it is so creative and intuitive, and everybody's energy is so unique and different that people see different unique things. And I'd love to at the end hear what came up for you. But for right now, just like kind of starting to recognize like these pages, that these are all different books, but like when they're all on top of each other and spread out, and you're reading like this page over here and then you're reading this page over here, it's not going to make as much sense, right? It's like getting jumbled with the energy of the other books and the other bindings and all of that. And so when the energy scatters, we don't have strong boundaries. And this is probably the most fundamental part of really working on our boundaries, is understanding and knowing and learning ways to condense the energy again and get back in your own fields so that you can shine brighter, right? So 4 of the elements that we go over in the longer course that I wanted to share with you here, I'm not going to have enough time. Like basically in the 5-week course, each week we go into one of these topics. Like, so we're diving in, right? But I did want to share them with you here because I think it helps a lot to just have these in your awareness. So to look at these elements for setting boundaries, it can be really helpful to just bring awareness, right? And the biggest part of this for me personally is really starting to get comfortable and familiar with what my inner no is and looks like, and what my inner yes is and looks like. And a no is very clear for a lot of people, and yes can be a little bit more confusing. So this is typically how it goes. A no, like when you know it's a no, you know. But to have your energy in confusion about your yes can lead to a lot of taking in of other people's energies, of the energy around you. What a yes feels like in my body, and I don't know about your body, like this is for you to explore. Typically a yes for most people feels like an expansion. It's almost like I think of this personally as like my womb energy being like, yeah, like expansion and a taking in, right? And a no is just a very clear like cut almost. And so for yourself, kind of just play around with this for a minute. Like, what does your inner no look like, feel like, sound like? And what does your inner yes look like, feel like, sound like? And how can you practice that without getting into your thinking brain? So go ahead and ask yourself, what does an inner no and an inner yes looks like without me engaging my logical brain? So feel it into your body, feel that no, feel that yes. Okay, and the next element for boundaries in this course that we go over is the containment of your energies. And this is what I was just talking about, and just really a way for you to be really clear about what your energies are that you bring to the table. Like, what does my energy look like? And knowing that it can evolve and change, but typically our energy field, our soul energy field, is what we came in with strong. And the only thing that can mask it or hide it is shadow, fears, um, shadow, fears, ego, right? Which is also like another way to look at like ego can be, I often talk about this, like ego can go both ways. Most people think of ego as only being like an inflated ego. Well, I also like to remind people that the opposite can be true, where your low self-worth or your self-judgment or your self-criticism is also ego. So containing your energy, your energies, your energies really has to do with getting comfortable and familiar with what is your soul purpose, your soul presence, and your soul being, and ways that you nurture and nourish those energies to keep them strong and keep them contained so that you can be more magnetic in all areas of your life, right? We all know someone in our life who, when you see them, you just feel good. When you see them, you're just like drawn in. It's like a magnetic presence, right? And one of the ways that you feel that is because they're containing their energy. They have a way that they're doing that, right? So many different ways to do that. But in this course and for today, we're talking about getting in touch with your soul energies. And then the next element is setting the vibe. And when I say this, I really want you to understand that subconsciously, so only 10% of our brain is at the conscious level, about 10%. Some people say even less. And the subconscious can struggle with setting a vibration. It's much easier for the subconscious mind to hitch a ride on a vibration than it is to set their own vibration, to set your own vibration for your day, for your moments, right? And especially when it comes to others. You might be in a specific vibe when you're alone, and then all of a sudden someone else comes in who is operating typically at a lower, or is in their victim, martyr, resentment place. And if you're not setting the vibration and setting that level with them, you're going to get swept into their field and you're going to be pulled into their vibration. And that doesn't do you or them any favors. And this is, this whole thing, like, to be likable, or to want to be likable. And it's really interesting if you think about like a magnet, like attracts like. Well, if someone comes in and their vibe is kind of like janky, which we all have these moments, right? Like we do our friends such, and our clients and our lovers and our people and our kids. Oh my gosh, kids are so good at setting the vibe, right? And they can set it whatever's going on for them. But what I wanted to say is, oh shit, you come in at that like janky or lower level vibration, which is normal. Like we all have these days or these times. And it's very easy, because like attracts like, for you, if someone, say, let's say a friend or something comes in at that vibe, for you to want to get at their level, and because that's like the tribe mentality, and that's like attracts like, right? Like you want to be likable, you want to show them that you also, like you also know that feeling and you struggle too. But that really doesn't do either of you any favor. So for you to instead set the vibe higher, and to not allow that to happen, to not allow yourself to be swept into that vibration, it can feel so uncomfortable, because you're like, oh my gosh, this person's going to hate me. And I've had this experience with a friend, with multiple friends, where they do this or I do this, and the next day one of us is like, thank you. Like, thank you so much for holding that vibration and asking that I have to raise up to be like attracts like. I have to magnetize. I have to allow myself to be pulled into that higher vibration in order to be with you, to break bread with you in a metaphysical sense, right? So setting the vibe is a huge part of creating your boundaries and really being okay with not being likable in the moments. Like really getting comfortable with that, which is super uncomfortable. And then finally, leading with love. So oftentimes, like I was mentioning in the beginning of this, like when I was younger, I was afraid of being a bitch. I was afraid of not being likable. I was afraid of being judged, criticized, harmed by being a bitch, you know? And what I've come to realize, it's taken me a very long time to get there, is that the only way to truly lead from love, to truly, truly lead from love, is to have those boundaries in place. Literally, it does no one any favors for you to be in martyrdom, victimhood, guilty consciousness, shame, resentments, right? And those are the biggest ones that I hear back from the women I work with, from even some of the men I work with, that it is so easy to think that your body's giving you a yes, like, I think this is okay, I think it's okay to do this, I think it's okay to do this, I think it's okay to do this. But that's getting into your brain, right? And really getting familiar with that inner yes and no, containing your energies and setting that vibe at where your inner yes is for that situation, right? Like, you can always find a yes. The thing that might be a yes, though, is not the thing that the person that you're with is expecting from you, or that your judgment brain yourself is expecting from you. But ultimately, to lead with love, that's the most compassionate thing that you can do for yourself, for the others around you, and for like little people, like for the people that you care for, or that are watching you, or that you might not even be in your consciousness. Like, you might not have kids, you might not be around kids, but ultimately the inner work that you're doing, like we always say, from micro to macro, that this inner work that we're all doing right now does ripple out, does affect the future generations, does affect the collective. And so there is never been a more important time to work on boundaries and to shine brighter in these boundaries. So that all being said, I'm super excited to be hosting this course. I think I did this slide before the other one, but we're doing a 5-week course. It's a group. I'm super excited because I love doing groups, especially in the fall time, because we are starting to kind of like be at home more and not see each other as much out in the world. And I love continuing to have that set point in the week, that set point to come together as community and to be held accountable for doing the work. That's like, whoo, I love groups for that. So what you'll gain from fortifying your boundaries, and however you choose to do that, from, really being in a place where you can meet all of those elements of boundary setting, you're going to gain more energy, which is going to literally feed everyone around you. When you have more energy, right? When you're that whole saying, like, you can't fill someone else's cup from an empty cup. And I really think of like this fountain, like you're manufacturing your own energy and you're keeping it contained enough so that these little spritzes are coming out, and just like someone can be like, ah, and they get just like this little drop that is way more nourishing than giving someone your everything and then hating them for it later. Or having, resentment later, or being angry about it later. So just remember that, like, to give someone just this tiny little drop is so much more compassionate than giving them a bunch and then later being like, well, what the fuck, So just something to keep in mind. You're personally going to have more satisfaction because you're going to be in your soul energy more, which is ultimately what we're here to do, right? It's like that self-actualization, which is like the foundation of my work here on this planet, is helping others reach that place so that more people see it and more people are magnetized to that, right? You'll have more of an influence on your community, whatever that community looks like, right? It's just natural. It's going to happen. less martyrdom, victim, resentment complexes, and less of that going on to our little people. More momentum and focus for what you want to create, what you want to see in your world, what you want to be, what you want to do, who you want to show up as.